Hey everybody, it's Christian Pedersen here with San Diego Prep Insider. The high school football season is upon us, so let's take our first look at Division 4 this year and see if there aren't some teams that we can't flag down as maybe early contenders, or at least squads that you want to watch out the gate to be the trendsetters and or the bar setters, the levelers, if you will, of this division. Moving up from D5, staying in D4, coming down from D3. Let's break down the teams into those three categories so we can get through it all for you. I'll read the list off once of the entire division, and then, like I said, we'll break it down by those three categories. We've got so far this year in Division 4 football, Classical Academy, Escondido Charter, Coronado, Calexico, Santana, Crawford, Chula Vista, Escondido, Mount Miguel, Bonita Vista, Hilltop, Francis Parker, Westview, Canyon Hills, Olympian, and Orange Glen. Let's break that down now into each category, like I said, up from 5, staying in 4, down from 3, and who are some of the teams that I really like out of each one of those groups. The moving up from 5, last year's champion, Classical Academy, Escondido, Charter, and Crawford. 3 very competent and solid teams that I would have said if any one of those 3 had remained down in D5, they would have been the de facto favorite to win D5. So competitive, yes. Whenever you have a championship team that graduates pieces, there's always questions about, who's going to immediately fill that role. Can the team adapt to the new role? Just like you never know. And so sometimes with teams like Classical Academy and Crawford, kind of both having the senior classes that they did peak when they did, like it seemed like perfect year for them both to be in a championship. And then you ask yourself, what can they do that next year? Crawford, they've lost a couple pieces to transfers as well. So identity-wise on offense, they've got Travion Blanks. And then the question is, who is going to fill in all of the other roles? I don't think there's a question about the athleticism and capability they've had. There was a sophomore here, a freshman there, someone that had a couple of plays on the varsity level last year where, like, not necessarily a huge sample size, but enough to know that there are people waiting in the wings at Crawford. Looking at their schedule, I think it's, as I pull it up here, I think it's winnable. I think a lot of these, when you move up or down a division, there's always some question. But Crawford should be, they're solidly in my contenders list. I think that all 3 of these D5 teams that have moved up to D4 this year will make the playoffs. Just we'll be curious where they end up being slotted. Classical Academy, they lose a ton from graduation last year, but what we saw last year, I think, was the coming out of a football program and a football culture that, let's see. Can they reproduce? Can they reproduce with new kids? It's going to have to be a different Pollard running the ball. It's going to have to be some other kids stepping up. But I think that we saw that the framework is at least there with Classical Academy. And again, if you look at the schedule, there are some of these games that are toss-ups. There are some games like SFC and Bishops that are going to be real tough, but are then, if they take those as losses, will be quality rubric-wise losses. So I think that Classical has a little bit of wiggle room as well in the schedule-wise or in the results-wise, that they can go 6-4, 7-3, and still call it a really successful transition year up and still be in a good place, playoff seeding-wise or skill-wise going into the playoffs. For Escondido Charter, it's going to be Nicholas Pedersen returning for them on offense. They are a team that lost a lot to graduation, so none of these D5 teams, I think, are runaway like a Palo Verde Valley situation or something like that, where they're going to keep still growing into themselves and just being the same exact dominant team from last year. Not saying that none of them can be successful and win a championship, but that's just kind of where I see those squads sitting at. Let's move on to the staying in Division 4 from last year, and that is Coronado, Calexico, Chula Vista, Mount Miguel, Hilltop, Francis Parker. Those are the teams staying in Division 4 from last year. Of that, I think that Coronado probably is the one that has been on the steadiest progression to inherit the title of team to beat in Division 4. Last year, another playoff run and a team that, yeah, everyone, like here, we keep saying the word graduation. It hits them. But Coronado never seems to have to necessarily go, super far into the extremes of having a crazy tight end or a huge running back in order to sustain wins. They seem to have a pretty solid offensive system figured out where they can grind it out, play good defensive ball, keep games close, and get the wins. And that, to me, system-wise, you can keep replacing pieces there that I don't see why they can't at least be in the conversation. They've got a pretty winnable schedule. They will have to end up playing Scripps Ranch, Patrick Henry, Mission Bay to close out the season, and that is tough, but that is also, after giving themselves some time in the beginning of the regular season to build up to that. So they will be a team that kind of closes out the season with a real litmus test of who will this Coronado team be going into the playoffs? Because they're going to make the playoffs. It's just a question of who will they be come playoff time after closing out the season with those 3 games. I will hope that they have found their identity and can be, like I said, I think they can be one of the de facto D4 teams to watch for, if not to beat. Next down, I've got Chula Vista as a team definitely to watch. Isaac Baca, their quarterback, he's a dual-thready kind of dude. Question is going to always be, where are the rest of the offensive options and weapons for Isaac? And, what can the defense do? Because you can't ask a kid to score 60 every single game. I'd like to think that we're sitting here and saying that Chula Vista is going to start steamrolling people by 4 or 5 touchdowns every single game because Isaac gets it all figured out and he has a couple of options here and there for a little bit of help. But taking this on a more pessimistic view, you got to hope that the defense can get just enough, get a couple of turnovers here, get a couple of this. So a couple guys will have to answer the call there. But on the offensive side, it's real, that's where we're going to watch Chula Vista this season, is because if Isaac can get a couple of options figured out, be that a running back, a screen game, you need a little something to just open up some room, because this kid has a running lane. He can take it. If he has a throwing option, he's shown that he's capable of finding it. They have a relatively winnable, competitive schedule this year. Mount Miguel is going to be an interesting game. Other than that, everything very, very winnable for Chula Vista this year. I think 8-2 is very reasonable. I think Chula Vista, along with Coronado, is the returning D4 teams to beat. Going past that, Hilltop, we've seen now on social, they got some offensive line size. That's cool. That's huge. They certainly lost a lot of pieces to graduation last year. It's going to be Isaac Meza is the returning offensive option who put up kind of any sort of significant stats. So he'll be the de facto, sort of senior leadership on that offense. They're going to have to rebuild, retool. This could be a youth movement that maybe not this year totally succeeds, but this could be where maybe we see the actual building blocks of where Hilltop is going to be headed under their new-ish head coach, and that this is the remaining turnover from the previous group is now gone. This is our chance to instill our identity and our philosophy fully from the roots up. So this could be a really good, solid building year for Hilltop. Doesn't mean they're not a team to beat, but I think they're maybe just one notch behind Coronado and Chula. Mount Miguel is going to have to be one of the ones where we're all excited about them, because it's finally Verlaine's chance as a head coach after years and years and years of success as an offensive coordinator and positions coach, state championships, back-to-back section championships, huge decisions to throw the ball to Jerry McClure with only moments left to beat Michigan. Offensive bona fides are there for Coach Patafe, and Verlaine is going to have a pretty decent amount of offensive options. Jeremiah Castillo is the Mount Miguel dude who's maybe the brand name signature wide receiver right now, but they've loaded up on, they've brought in a new quarterback. They've got some other senior options who have produced. This is not a team that's been gutted by graduation, and so Verlaine has to show up and really all build it up. They've got a little bit of a crutch to lean on with Castillo. And so I think that this could be a team that once they figure it out, and they do have a tough schedule, Chula Vista, Montgomery, Grossmont out the gate, Bishops, El Cap, they've got some games that are going to have to be really competitive, that they're going to have to know what they're doing to stay in them, but they've got some opportunity sprinkled in there also to have some decently winnable games where maybe this is a team that goes 6-4 or 5-5 and stumbles a little bit, but plays their best ball by the end of the season type of thing. So definitely keep an eye on Mount Miguel. For the rest of the teams, let's talk about coming down from Division 3. That is going to be Santana, Escondido, Bonita Vista, Westview, Canyon Hills, Olympian, and Orange Glen. Olympian, CJ Cavalier. Sorry, CJ. Have notes, but not the roster is up right now. We're looking at the schedule here. This is winnable. Olympian going to have to find a new quarterback as well as mostly a new offense in terms of a lot of the senior production graduates, but they've got the defense. And we've talked the flip side of that with like Chula in this division where they've got the offense. They just got to get a little bit of the defense. This could be one where Olympian keeps a lot of people in it. They've just got to figure out how to score just enough to win it. And I don't hate that with the schedule that they've got. They got a chance to really stay competitive in this, and this could be one where when it comes down to the end of the year and they've got to, maybe they've got to rattle off wins against Bonita, Hilltop, Sweetwater, they might actually have it all figured out by then. So maybe out the gate they look a little wonky and a little rough figuring it out on the offensive side, but I think that this team just needs to figure it out just a little bit, because if that defense can stay healthy, they'll be pretty solid and locked down. Santana, another one of the teams coming down from Division 3 that I look at, and I just go, well, you got to watch them because we're going to have no idea by the end of the season what this team is. I look at this schedule and I go, woof, congratulations, Santana. You win the craziest schedule of the season that I've looked at so far this year. They start out easy enough, or not easy enough, but relative comparable strength enough of Sweetwater, Coronado, and Fallbrook to get the year going. But after that, it becomes El Cap, Granite Hills, Steel Canyon, Helix, Grossmont, West Hills. That's a gauntlet and a half for Santana to run through. And I don't know how much you want to say whether or not you're a moral victories kind of guy and you can take away the, here's the silver lining to this one. We saw how fast they play. They're like, I'm not going to fully subscribe that you can just go 0-10, but as long as it's above, like you're playing great competition, you're going to learn from it. And then you go down a bunch of divisions and you could still wreck house. Like, I think you do need to get some wins here and there to figure out like a little bit of that self-confidence, but this could be like a 2-8 Santana that wins a CIF title. That's how little we're going to know about this team, just based off of they're not playing comparable talent to what the rest of the strengths of schedules will be. So that's why I throw them you got to watch for them anyway, because maybe you just got to watch for, all right, in that game, the quarterback got that much better. The defense figured out that one thing, that when it all balances out and they get to the D4 playoffs after having played up here all season, maybe they just are road warriors that wreck house and they're ready to be at that comparable talent. Who knows? That's just my thought. That's enough of me talking at this point about all of this. But look, it's coming up soon enough that football is going to be here, that we're going to start having some sample size to really actually dig into this. So let us know what you think about who maybe we're still sleeping on, or what your takes on or any of these teams from Division 4, and go check out the rest of our previews. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.